On Tuesday, North Korea announced that in response to a United Nations rebuke over its recent missile launch, it will kick out UN inspectors, pull out of nuclear disarmament talks, and go forward with its nuclear program. Here to talk about this is David Asher, who was a senior advisor to the Bush State Department involved deeply in the issue of North Korea, and New York Times chief Washington correspondent David Sanger. He is in the New York bureau of the Times, and he's also the author of The Inheritance, a book about the world Barack Obama inherits, including the tricky problem of North Korea. David Asher, I want to start with you. These recent developments from North Korea, put them in some context, because North Korea is kind of a tricky country. We don't know quite what to make of it, yet it is a serious problem.
Well, we always say history doesn't repeat itself, it just rhymes with North Korea. Mark Twain coined that phrase, and it really applies. They've repeated the same playbook of engagement followed by a sort of predatory escalation, followed by a degree of engagement in the context of always trying to extract the maximum amount of financial benefits and global attention possible. So in some ways they're having a tantrum, and it's not at all uncharacteristic. It's a very rational policy that they've had, a strategy that they've had going back to the early 90s, and it's consistently paid off. The question here is, will it be any different than in the past?
David Sanger, what does your reporting tell you about the way the Obama folks see North Korea compared to the way the Bush administration saw it, and what are they trying to do to deal with this cycle of tantrum and misbehavior by North Korea?
Well, I think the first thing that they've done differently here, John, is they've basically decided to plan for and ignore the tantrums, something anybody with kids would appreciate, right? So you have not heard President Obama shoot back in any particular way, talk very much about the North Koreans. In fact, when they appointed a North Korea coordinator to play the role that Chris Hill played in those six-party talks that played out for so many years in the Bush second term, they hired Steve Bosworth, who's a former American ambassador to South Korea, and he's doing it as a part-time job. He's remaining as dean of a school while he's doing it. I think that tells you everything you need to know about how they plan to do this, which is try to contain the problem but not invest heavily in it. There is a risk in that, John, and it's this. It's not that North Korea will shoot a missile at the United States or at Japan or at South Korea. The big problem with North Korea has always been a proliferation problem. That reactor in Syria the Israelis bombed 2 years ago, it was North Korean. There have been other cases like this. So the big fear is, how do you stop the shipments?
So, David, what's your view of the way the Obama administration is approaching this? And also, can you talk to me a little bit about what actually works and what doesn't work with North Korea in terms of getting them to do what the U.S. wants?
Well, I think the Obama strategy is pretty intelligent. I agree with David on that. It's a certain degree of distance and discipline. They're not over-promising North Korea in any way. I think they have sincerely put forward a willingness to negotiate, including bilaterally, at the appropriate level and at the appropriate time, but under appropriate conditions. I think they'll talk to them under any conditions, essentially. We always felt that when I was at the Powell State Department there was nothing wrong with it, but you, at the same time, have to be wary of the North Koreans trying to get you into a trap, which they've done repeatedly, of making the process more important than the outcome. So I think that they're doing a pretty intelligent job over at the Clinton State Department. The problem, as David points out right now, is proliferation.
Right.
This was a major part of my work at the National Security Council and the State Department. We put forward many plans to more effectively counter North Korean proliferation. We could never get them approved. The result was, as David points out, this reactor in Syria that we had known about and pursued without result.
Is that fixed through talking, though?
No, that's not. I don't think there's a chance that the negotiations will have any impact on the proliferation activity. The Syria reactor program began back in the 90s under the nuclear talks that the Clinton administration had under the agreed framework, four-party talks at the time. Their cooperation with the AQ-CON network, of which that is probably a manifestation, was active at that period. Same thing happened under us. They were proliferating the entire time we were negotiating, and it's what we don't know about. For example, with Iran, that I think is particularly concerning, particularly at this time.
So David Sanger, the last question then goes to you, which is what actually effectively can be done on the question of proliferation, and then piggybacking on that talk a little bit about Russia and China. How can they be helpful here on this proliferation question?
John, the United Nations Security Council passed a presidential statement, which is weaker than a Security Council resolution, just over the weekend. I guess on Monday it passed through and led to this North Korean reaction. And it called for full enforcement of the last set of sanctions that were placed on North Korea after North Korea conducted its nuclear test in the fall of 2006. If you read through those sanctions, it lays out a possibility of what the U.S. and its allies could do. It actually authorizes member states to go intercept, board, and inspect North Korean shipping in and out of the country to make sure there are no banned materials or weapons. After the U.S. pressed for this additional resolution a few days ago, I asked the question, so we're now planning to go board and intercept the shipping? And they said, oh, no, we didn't say that. So I think one thing you should look for is whether or not President Obama has a real plan to go try to interfere with this system. The pressure against doing that is going to come from Russia and China. The Chinese are interested primarily in making sure that North Korea is stable, that it doesn't collapse, because those refugees, if the state does collapse, are coming right over the Chinese border. And the Russians, again, just want it to be calm. Neither one of them wants to see North Korea expand its nuclear arsenal, but they are not willing, I think, to go the extra mile that could threaten the stability of Kim Jong-il's regime.
Okay. Thanks very much, David Sanger. David Asher, thanks very much for being with us. You're watching
Thank
Washington
you.
Unplugged on CBSNews.com.